Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we are starting the final build for Taroa and the next movie for Taroa, which is Atlantis. I am so excited to be including this movie in this world. It was one of those ones that a lot of my patrons in particular really like this movie, and I wanted to have it somewhere, but I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. Over the years of getting all of the Sims 4 worlds, like the newer ones since I've started the Disney save, it's just made so much more space for me to be able to possibly do ideas like this that honestly originally probably would not have been included with what we had when I started the Disney save. Just because Atlantis is a little bit more of one of those films that's under the radar, but I guess you could say in general all of the films that were picked for this world have been lesser known or lesser favorite movies. Hercules is one of my favorites, as I've said many times, but I know Atlantis is another really big Disney fanatic fan favorite. So I'm excited to be bringing something regarding it into the save file today. This will include one build, and then we're going to have all of the characters that live here. There will only be a few, and then I'm going to be doing a very large townie household with a lot of the other Atlantis townies. Now I have to say I actually really struggled with this build more than anything else that I made in Taroa. It is so different than the theming of pretty much everything else that's here, and I liked this lot in particular because it is kind of tucked away further up the mountainside. Like, it's very secluded by itself, but it wasn't a super huge lot, so I knew I was restricted in terms of like what I could actually create from Atlantis. So my thought when going into it is that I would be making kind of a section of Atlantis. This is something that I sort of routinely do when I don't have enough space to build like a wide scale village or a really large castle. This is like a mini castle, or if you're familiar with how the city is set up, it's kind of built up into a mountain, and the tippy top seems to be kind of like the royal estate. So we are at the top of the mountain, and this is just like the uppermost section of the city and the kingdom, and this is where the king lives and Kita, and then I'm also going to have Milo as a part of this household. I kind of have them in the middle of the story, so the three of them are the main characters of this household, and then a lot of the other characters that go on the expedition will be in the townie household, and you can sort of mix and match from there. But you can also think of it as like, these are the three characters that genuinely live here, and then there are some that the rest of them end up going back to wherever they're from after the events of the movie. So besides the space issue and really trying to like pull off the aesthetic of such a complicated build with very limited room here, there's a lot that's going on in terms of design and like colors, and I just wasn't really sure how to go about this exactly. This isn't a movie where you get like a lot of really great reference. You don't get shown the interiors of too many locations or too much of the city. I did rewatch the film, and then I also watched most of the second movie that was made to try to get as much as possible, but the second film doesn't take place in Atlantis very much, so it didn't super help when it came to figuring out how to do this. And so what I decided to do ultimately is combine a few ideas. I wanted this to be kind of futuristic, so there's pops of like technology here, but not too much, because it's supposed to be like they're kind of in a ruined state. They're not really familiar with their own technology at this point. So I also wanted that ruins element. I wanted to use some of those pieces from the Get Together world and make it look disheveled and a little bit broken, and like things are not exactly put together. Handcrafted was also kind of the vibe, and then I felt like jungle adventure was going to be really key to making this look a little bit more Atlantis and less like Greek or Roman inspired like some of the other Hercules things that I've done for this world. So I used some of the like jungle adventure plants, especially the debug ones, to try and do that overgrown aesthetic, and then there is a combination between like Get Together, the Roman pillars, and some of the other things that really do make it look a little bit closer to Hercules, which makes the world very cohesive looking. But even when you see the overhead map, this is definitely the one that stands out. It's got the blue glowy aesthetic. It has to have the blue crystals, of course, and I did want like kind of that mystical magical element as well. I actually went and bought the new Crystal Creations pack just to do this build because it comes with these little crystal charging stations, and then it comes with the gemology skill and all of those things, and I felt like that was really important for the characters that live here. So I put a couple of those crystal charging stations around, kind of like they're powering the Atlantis build. And then the last element is water. Of course we have to have water. I wanted pools for them to be able to swim in. I wanted as much flowing water as possible, waterfalls. This was done before the newest kit came out. There's a brand new kit that is I don't even know what it's called, and it comes with these rocks that have little waterfalls built into it, and I might go back to this build and update this a little bit with those rocks because it really would help. But other than that, we do have a lot of like waterfall type items. Some of them are jungle adventure, some are base game, but having lots of the free flowing water all around. And I would have done much more of that if we had more space. But one of my personal pet peeves for building is that I do not like when I go all the way up to the borders of a lot, especially if it makes it look really squared off. So when you're working within the space, it's like I'm already kind of restricted in terms of how much space I actually have to work here. But then I wanted to add pools, and I really just didn't want the edges of the pools going all the way up to the edge of the lot. I think it looks a little bit funny when all of your builds are really rectangular or square. So I'm trying to ignore the outskirts of the lot perimeter and still do everything that I want to do, which makes the lot a little bit smaller. So we have a lot going on here. There's a lot of back and forth, especially when we go into the interior in terms of how I tried to make it look inside. It looks funky for a while, and then I kind of find a flow for it. Again, I don't have a lot of reference for this. Thinking about like, what does an Atlantean kitchen and bathroom look like, or what even do their bedrooms really look like, because it's not really shown in the film. I was totally going in blind, and I tried to find like any other type of art or reference. Sometimes you can get lucky and find books that Disney has put out where they'll have like other art or other images related to the film that kind of help guide me. For this one, there really wasn't very much of anything, so I had to just go based on what I felt like was correct. And I feel like there's a lot of conflicting ideas here. Like there's a little bit of advanced technology, but not too much. It's supposed to be kind of messy and in ruin, but not too much. And then it has this overgrown jungle element, but you don't want it to be so much that it doesn't make for a good living environment. So there is, just a lot going on with this build, but I think it ultimately came out really cute. It's very different than anything I've ever built. It's kind of big for 3 Sims, but that's okay because it is like a royal estate. And then there ended up being a basement floor. I'm not sure how much of the footage is going to be included in today's video, but one of my patrons reminded me that there is a scene in the film where Kita goes to find, I think she's finding the crystal? I don't remember the specifics of the scene, but it has something to do with her mother and her sort of gaining the abilities of like taking over Atlantean powers, and she ends up glowing and floating in the middle of the room. And I really wanted to include that as well, so I ended up doing a basement floor with a larger pool and some references to that particular scene in the film. So there's a couple of pools on the lot. There is one on each side currently, and then there's one on the basement level. At some point, you'll actually see the entire right side of the build completely change. I decided that it didn't look jungly enough. It was looking a little bit too castle-y. I was trying to find the balance, and I wanted more large walkable platforms, especially where you could put some sort of like an outdoor throne room, because that is shown in the film as well with the king. So I needed larger stairways and larger outdoor platforms that I could do that. So I had to basically destroy the right side of the build and completely redo it, and I ended up adding like a throne room and everything on that side. And then the other thing about this build that makes it really tricky, other than the round walls, and every single time I say that I am not going to use round walls anymore, I do it, and I regret it every time. It is such a nightmare with all of the different mechanics that don't work, or I should say don't work the way that they probably should. I really wanted this to have ease of access around the build without adding too many internal stairs. So I opted to use the portals that I have been kind of neglecting amongst my builds, but now that I remember that the Realm of Magic portals exist, especially for builds like this, I really feel like you can get away with it. They glow blue and purple, first of all, and I feel like it is a technology that could be sort of in line with Atlantean technology. Because when you think of like Atlantean technology, it has like this magical element to it. They use these crystals, and I'm not even sure if they're aware like fully where the crystals get their power from. So it does have like this element of magic, and I feel like a little bit of like easy transportation or portal transportation would not be completely outside of their realm. So rather than filling this entire place with stairs or trying to work a bunch of these like outdoor jungly looking platform stairs around the build, which I really didn't have room for anyway, I thought it would be better to just use some of the portals. So there's 2 in the build. There's one that will take you to the basement level, and then there's one that will take you to the tippy top most floor, which ended up being Kita and Milo's bedroom. And I ultimately didn't put the king on the top floor, even though it probably makes more sense for him to get like the top, because because his room is right off of the side of this platform that I'm building, which will become the throne platform. So he's got his throne room and his bedroom right off to the left, and then the top floor is for Kita and Milo has a little tower up top that I'm going to be decorating with some of like his science equipment and archaeology things and the gemology stuff, and then the bottom floor ends up being like the living quarters with the kitchen and dining and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm really glad that Atlantis ultimately is making it into the save. I think you guys are going to be really excited about the characters. They turned out super well. It turns out that the art style for Atlantis really translates well into The Sims, and we had a lot of the characters' hair, and I found like really good outfits for everybody. I'm excited to showcase those characters. They came out a lot better than I would have expected. They're super recognizable, and I'm just excited to have like a different type of household for this world. I think we ultimately ended up with a good mix. Like, you've got the gods of Olympus, you have a lot of magical characters, a lot of famous characters. Hercules and his household is kind of somewhere in between, and then you have the more family vibes of Luca, so you can play something very small town, just do normal jobs, be a fisherman. And then you have this, which is kind of like a mystery, is the way that I'm thinking of it in terms of the save file. Like, these are characters that live alone, they are alone, this law is hard to get to, and it could be something that you're trying to sort of like aspire to get to or discover or help them rebuild as a society. So they've got a lot of like that broken ruins element to the build, so you can sort of like repair it over time or just build it up in general. And other than this build and just like creating something inspired by Atlantis, I'm really not too sure what we would have done anyway, other than just doing a residential. There isn't a ton of stuff to do for Atlantis. There's not a lot of locations, and I'm trying to kind of ignore second films, especially if they're like the straight to DVD films for Disney. So I do sort of like ignore that element in general when doing the Disney save. I'm sorry that I had a little bit of a break in between some recent videos. I said that I was gonna have a bunch out and then I sort of didn't. It works out to be that way quite a bit for me, but I'm always still working on the save file. What I've been working on is getting Tartosa ready to go and available for download, and if you're a patron, it is already available. I will have public release available within the next couple of days to about a weekish. When the Tartosa tour video comes out, you will have access to it the same day if you are not a patron. But if you want to get it a little bit earlier, you can go over to Patreon. You would have to pledge in order to grab it real quick, but other than that, just wait a few days and it will be made publicly available. And then the other way that you can always kind of steal my stuff quickly and without having to be a patron is you can just go onto the gallery, and I upload everything there right away, so it's already available by the time you're seeing this video. You could get a sneak peek at the Atlantis characters if you wanted to see them already, but hopefully you'll wait until the Creative Sim. I really wanted to get Tartosa done. My patrons have been voting on the next world for the save file. I'm going to go ahead and announce it already. It is going to be Oasis Springs. We are all super excited to be doing Oasis Springs. It has been one of those ones that almost wins every single vote, and it just barely misses to something else, whether it be because something new came out or my patrons sort of like change over time, and so for a little while I'll get like a group that's really excited about something else, but then ultimately it's always been in the back there. Many people very excited, especially because some of the movies that we'll be doing in Oasis Springs are big fan favorites of Disney, and it's a huge world. It's one that, like, I haven't done a big world like this in a while. I've been doing these sort of medium-sized worlds for about a year now with Sulani and Tartosa and Moonwood Mill. So I am expecting to take my time in Oasis Springs. It will be probably, I think it ends up being like 4 or 5 films, and it's going to be a ton of work, but I'm super excited. The aesthetic is very different than some of the stuff that I've been doing recently. There's a mix of modern there. There is a mix of older Disney princessy sort of movies. It'll be really great. I hope you guys are excited for that as well. I'm not going to spoil too much of like what the actual films are and things, because I haven't even technically started it yet. I've been planning the world out. I've been trying to finish Tartosa and make it available and ready for download before I even start over in that world, and then I really wanted to catch up on some videos and get these out so everybody could see the cool Atlantis stuff before it's time to move on. And that's kind of been the delay on my end. That's usually the case. I'm kind of working on something that I can't really make videos out of, and there's not much to say. I just got to do a lot of work in the background. The other thing I did with the new Tartosa version is that I have, of course, updated all of my previous Sims Sims with anything new that has come out. So when we got the Crystal Creations pack, I went through and made sure that I added some of the gemology skill to some of the Sims that probably need it, like the 7 dwarves from Henford on Bagley and other characters and things like that. So I have to go back and update characters per the new packs, as well as get everything finalized and tested for this world. And it took me, I think, about 2 weeks, which isn't too bad. I'm usually a lot longer than that. I'm getting pretty good at testing everything and working out all the bugs. And then, yeah, there's always dealing with like the Sims themselves. They always love to put out patches and updates when I'm in the middle of playtesting, and it always screws something up for me. They have actually recently announced, in between like the last time I talked to you guys and me doing today's video, the Sims put out a public statement noting that they have some sort of a team that they're putting together to work on a lot of the major bugs and glitches, especially older ones. They put out kind of like an apology letter and then also a list of things that they're going to be working on over time. The list you can go and check out on, I think it's like the Sims website, but then additionally they mentioned that they are going to be working on lag and frame rate, and I think in general they're updating the game to like a new system of some sort. I'm not really familiar with how that works, so fingers crossed that some of the stuff I've been experiencing since For Rent is better. I have patched my game since then. I updated. They claimed to have taken out some of the lag. I'm still experiencing lag detrimentally, especially when playtesting. My big problem right now is that when I go into live mode and I play and I'm trying to like test a build and then I need to fix something, so I need to go over to build mode. For some reason, being in live mode and then going to build mode from there, the game really does not like that right now. It has been happening since the For Rent patch back in December, and my game will sometimes just freeze for several minutes and I have to just wait it out. And there's really no way to get around it, and I have tried so many things to try to fix it, but I really just think it's the patch, because it's not a problem that I experienced before that patch. It was something that was made immediately available to me. Like, that was an immediate issue, as well as just general lag and frame rate issues. And then they put out this patch and I thought that maybe it was fixed for a second because I was loaded into one household and it seemed like it was running a lot smoother when I was trying to do that. And then a few minutes later, it ended up just going back to doing the same exact thing. So I haven't seen any major changes in terms of fixing those types of things. Even bigger than that though, the big issue that I personally face with the save file is that because I'm a builder that builds with a lot of items, I'm still getting endless loading screens. And this is a problem that I've been complaining about for a while. It happened in one of my tour videos. It happens to me whenever I'm testing every new world, every new household that I build. Like, there's always one in any given world that for some reason, when I try to load in and out of the lot, it will create an endless loading screen. And then I sort of have to like figure out what's causing it. Even though the report on like the issue, you can go on the Sims forums and there's like reports that get made. And the thing that's really frustrating about this particular bug is that so many people are experiencing it, but they're experiencing it in different ways. Like, I've seen people say that it's happening with their builds that are new, with ones that are old, with new save files, with old save files, with CC and mods installed, without it. So there's no really great way to like replicate the issue, and no one knows when it's going to happen to them. I know that it happens in my Disney save file, but it has always happened. It has also happened in other save files, like my testing one. I don't really use mods or CC. I use like the 3D eyelashes and MC Command Center here and there to like cheat certain things. And then when I was playtesting Tartosa this time around, after The Sims had put out this patch where hopefully they were fixing a lot of these issues, although the endless loading screen bug has not been mentioned by The Sims at all. They have not said that they're working on it. They've not even acknowledged it on The Sims forums, and it was not on the list in this apology that they made, which is really frustrating for me because this is one that I personally am really struggling with. I had the problem occur in my new Luca household, and that build is a little bit big, which sometimes the bigger builds can cause it, but Olympus is much, much bigger than the Luca household, both in the amount of items that are on that lot, the decorations, the pool, and how big the lot size is, and also how many Sims live in that household. So you would think if it was going to happen anywhere, it would have happened on my Olympus household, and that one is running perfectly fine, but I did have it happen with the Luca household, and I had to sort of like backtrack, move the household out, delete some of the objects, reduce the build, until it would stop doing it, and ultimately it's just not great. For the save file, I actually have 2 builds over in Henford on Bagley that I have not been able to get the endless loading screen to stop doing, unless I do like a lesser version of my build. So Belle's Village, that is supposed to be this community space where your Sims can vote and it'll sort of transform, and it'll be slightly different every single time. It's one of my oldest builds and I've put a ton of time and work into it. It's beautiful. It's been updated many times. I've had to reduce it to making it a generic lot and placing it in that world as like a non-transformable lot that has less items and less things going on, because the community space lots in particular have definitely been one of those ones that if there's too many items on the lot, you get an endless loading screen. And then my fear is that if I put out the save file, someone else will have the endless loading screen. Like, it's not just something that's occurring on my end, and I would hate for anybody to download the save and feel like something is broken or not working. So I ultimately just take the build out of the save and end up putting in something that's not as nice to kind of hold the place for it until hopefully they fix this. The other one is the Witch's Cottage from Brave. This is a really cool lot where it's also a community space, so when it transforms, it turns into different locations from Brave, including the stones and the cottage that she lives in, but sometimes it turns into like a wood workshop, and sometimes it's more of like an abandoned cottage. And that one also was having it, so I had to just take the build out of the save file and just put it in as I think it's in as like a residential, but nobody lives there, because the witch from Brave actually serves as the creature keeper NPC role in my save file. So I couldn't have her move in because it kind of would have like messed things up. But yeah, ultimately The Sims has not acknowledged this bug at all. I'm wondering if they ever are going to fix it. It is starting to become one of those things to me that I think that they changed something in the coding of the game back in December, and they're not actually going to be able to fix whatever's wrong. They just aren't acknowledging it because it's not something that they're going to work on or fix. People in the forums seem to feel that way, at least some of them, and then there's others that think that, well, they see it and it's here and they're probably acknowledging it, but they have not put it on any lists of like, we are working on this bug, and it's really disheartening. So if you're experiencing Sims 4 bugs, definitely go to the Sims forums and like find your bug and click, there's like a button that says I am having this issue too, or I am also having this problem. And the more people that hit those buttons, the more I feel it becomes a bit of a priority for the Sims. I think this one's getting ignored either because they cannot fix it, or it only happens to builders like me that use a lot of objects on their lots. The average builder and the average player are probably not experiencing this too much, and it's just annoying. Like, I'd really like it fixed. I'd like to be able to put my save file out the way that it is intended, and it ultimately causes me so much time trying to fix things that aren't really that broken. They're just not working for some reason whenever I'm trying to playtest a world. I really do want to talk about this like general living room area that I'm working on throughout this build, because it's going to change very drastically here and there. I originally built, as you can see, this sort of like, I don't know what you would call it. It's got like pillars and columns, and it's meant to sort of break up the space and help it feel very regal and lots of stonework. I wanted that sort of like embellished look to the interior of this build, and I actually had the same exact problem when I was working on Athena's bedroom over in my Olympus build, because I wanted something similar in her space. I really feel like it helps make the room just feel more royal and important, like these platforms that have the spandrels and the columns, and it's just sort of a way to break up the space and give some elevation. But it was so crowded, and the way that it looked in here, I just kept deleting it and changing it and hanging up curtains and pulling things down and adding different columns, trying to make it work, because I felt like no matter what I did, it just didn't look quite right, and it took up too much of the space in a way that wasn't very useful, and it also wasn't very pretty to look at. So I just kept changing it, but ultimately I ended up getting rid of most of it. A lot of the columns get removed and the spandrels get taken down and the curtains, and I ended up just leaving some of the fountains and the seating areas and the different sort of textures in terms of like the different tiles and things on the floor. So it's not as busy and cluttered and messy as it is originally being shown in the video. I think that's something that I originally thought I needed to do when trying to make this build. I wanted like this overgrown, cluttered look to it, but I think because a lot of their furniture would be handmade or hand carved or stone or like easily made with technology, so it might even have like a sleek modern look to some of it, I decided that having the rooms be less cluttered and more open to just like air and space was probably closer to what it would have actually looked like. Especially in their bedrooms, when we go upstairs, I kept it very simple, just a bed and like things that you need, a mirror, a wardrobe, but not a lot of clutter, no decorations really. The greenery is the decorations. And then I also did something interesting for for the kitchen for the first time. There are some newer objects, like I have this new object and it's kind of like a longer grill. I'm not sure which pack it's from, but it's definitely one of the newer ones. And you can cook some things on it, like it's obviously a grill, so the options are limited in terms of what you can actually make. But I feel like grilling would be more in line with like some of the food that they would actually make. So I wanted this to be in the kitchen area and serve as the optional oven. Now you do have to have another oven to make like actual food, so I did put another oven in here, but I wanted this other one that was more of like a grate and just fire and they could like cook over the top of it in the kitchen. But the metal one is too modern looking. It looks kind of funny actually, so I ultimately was like, I gotta cover it up with some rocks and things and make it look a little bit more organic and match the rest of the build. You'll be surprised to know that when I went to play test this kitchen, this did not work at all, but I was able to find a way to make it work. One of the things that you can do is put objects in the basement and then raise them up so high that they end up on the next floor. And then if you can just like finagle them exactly where they need to go, you can still use them, but the game registers the object as being on the bottom floor, so it's not actually in the way. So I ended up placing the grill on this floor in the kitchen, and that way it works and you can use it. And then the stones that cover the grill are technically on the floor below it, and the game doesn't register that they are in the way anymore. So that is a quick little hack if you're ever looking to make something kind of more covered up, or you're using other objects to cover it to make it look different. Put them on the floor below and raise them up. It does create a little bit of like a weird perspective when you are in the basement level of this build and you're trying to swim in the pool. You'll see some stones kind of like floating in the air, but it doesn't bother me too much. I don't want to utilize it too much because I don't like the like floating in the air aspect, especially when you're in the basement. But if this build had no basement floor, then it would not even bother anybody and it would look perfectly fine. So I did go with it. I think it looks really cool. I actually had a really weird glitch with this kitchen. I have no clue what's going on here. When I went to go and test Tartosa, this is the first world that I had multiple issues with pathing and I was not able to ultimately fix them. It's really tough because I'm like, I don't want to put out a save file where anything's not working, so I have to make everything functional. Like they need to have a fully working kitchen, but I don't want to change too much of my build, and especially when there's nothing really going on that should be blocking objects. So for this kitchen, for some reason, over where I have placed the dining room table, Sims cannot get over there or walk at all. I have no idea why. I have tried to remove everything, rebuild the room, replace individual walls, rebuild the platform, delete everything, delete all the plants, and even if you strip it down to its bare bones and just have the platform there, for some reason Sims cannot walk over where I have placed that dining room set. I don't know if there's something wrong with the lot. I don't know what's going on. I've never been able to like playtest and not fix an area. So what I had to do ultimately was move the dining set. It ends up being further into the kitchen so that everybody can get to all of the chairs, and it doesn't get that tucked away feel and it doesn't look quite as nice, but I do think it's a glitch in The Sims. I don't think it has anything to do with my build. Like I said, I've basically stripped it down to nothing and I still could not get it to work, and it was saying that there was something in the way. So I had to change around this kitchen a little bit from what you're seeing now, but it's really just that the dining room table ends up being a little bit closer into the general kitchen area so everybody can get to chairs and things like that. I had the same problem on the Olympus build. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. It is a absolutely massive Hercules inspired Olympus build floating in the sky with clouds, and basically there were lots of round outdoor rooms that I had created just out of like pillars and spandrels, like nothing that's enclosed. And for some reason, wherever I had placed round rooms in that sort of way, Sims can't walk inside of them. And that's not a surprise to me because the game has had a hard time with round rooms since they've been implemented. So I say it every time, like I mentioned, I don't want to use them anymore. I'm going to try to avoid them in the future as much as possible because it just creates so many issues. But for that build and that household, it looked too good not to keep it, so I ended up just leaving it alone. That space was for decoration anyway, so it does work out. And then for the last few bits of the video here today, we just have the bedrooms. The first one I am doing is the king's bedroom. He has the larger space ultimately, and he has a little column pillar off to the side of his room that I decided would be a really great prayer or meditation space. So I gave him the little meditating pad so he can sit in there and do that. I feel feel like they definitely would have spaces dedicated just for this. I'm always trying to think of like activities that the characters would genuinely do and whatever can translate over to The Sims, because obviously there's lots of characters that have different skills and things that they would do, but we might not have something that kind of corresponds with it in the game. Like Merida, she would obviously do archery and practice, and I would have loved to have put that in that build, but we just don't have anything like it. But I feel like for this, having a few prayer spaces, or at least meditation at the very least, in different spaces in this build makes a lot of sense. And then I also wanted to have spaces to do the crystal charging or crystal work. So any other bump outs out of this room, there's one like kind of right off to the front that is enclosed. I put one of the crystal charging stations in there. And then I can also picture these characters being very loungy, kind of like Aladdin. There would be some general rooms or areas that are just for sitting and chatting, especially if you're a king, you need to have some space to kind of like talk to people, talk to guests, have people over. So he's got his like little loungy area there, and then not too much else. I let the rest of the build sort of be the greenery and tried not to clutter it up too much, like I mentioned, because it really wasn't working aesthetically. So having it be more open and airy and letting some of the elements of like the decorative pillows and the rocks and some minimal waterfalls and lighting speak for itself. Now I do want to mention, because I know people are going to try and correct me, I know that the king passes in the film and he technically would not be living here at the same time as Milo and Kita, but this ended up being a big enough build that I felt like just having the two Sims live here wasn't going to be quite enough. So I wanted to do like one more bedroom and have him available as a character so you could play through the whole storyline. You could either, you know, like organically play through it, kind of kill him off, or you can definitely just delete him from the household if you would rather just play with Milo and Kita. The way that they are designed is they're kind of like at the beginning of their story. I know that this is like kind of a mix-up because it's like, well, the king lives here, but then we've got all the townie characters, but Milo lives here, but they're at the beginning of their story. It's not a perfect mix. I just wanted all of the three livable characters here. You can mix and match them as you please. The townies are also available. They do stay here at one point, although they're not really welcome, and it's kind of like a 24-hour thing, so I didn't feel comfortable like doing bedrooms and having them sort of live and be a part of the household. But then Milo and Kita are such a cute couple, and they are so highly regarded amongst like shipping, so I wanted to have the ability to play them through and like explore their romance. And so I really didn't implement too much with them in terms of romance. Like, I don't even think they're technically boyfriend and girlfriend. They haven't had their first kiss in the save file, stuff like that. They just barely have started to like know each other romantically, and you can explore that as you would, because I think that would be a fun storyline to play through. So something that I do a lot of when creating any new movie into the Disney save is research. I read pretty extensively about the films, and anything that I can get, like any info, any additional artwork, I try to gather as much information as possible, talking to people, patrons. They help a lot with like random things and fun facts about the movies, and it helps like bring little things into the builds and just be as accurate as possible. And one of my favorites is Disney Wiki. I've talked about it a lot in different videos, and there is a section at the bottom of every character or location or movie's Disney Wiki called Trivia, and it's really just fun facts about the film. When I was creating all of the characters, there was a lot of really interesting info at the bottom of each character's page. So I'm going to read some of them to you. If you like this part, if you like more Disney trivia, please let me know for future videos and I'll read some of the other interesting ones that I find for future movies and things. But this comes from Milo's page on Disney Wiki, and this is just a couple of the ones that I thought were really interesting. According to the 2-disc DVD set Before Falling in Love and Marrying Kita, Milo's first love interest was named Lisa. Milo's complaint about how much he does not like carrots after puking over the ship used to launch the Ulysses could be a reference to how his voice actor, Michael J. Fox, is actually allergic to carrots, and the line was ad-libbed by Fox. It was not supposed to be in the original script. I thought that one was really funny. Milo's decision to remain in Atlantis at the end of the film was better for him due to the fact that the film was set in 1914, 3 years before the US joined World War I. It is possible that Milo could have been drafted into the war. I guess this one's a little bit of an opinion, but I just thought that timeline was kind of like an interesting thing, because it is, I think, referenced, like real events are referenced in the movie, which is something that you don't see in all of the Disney films. The shorts that Milo wears to swim to find the heart of Atlantis in the movie are actually boxer shorts, which means that Milo's short is his underwear. However, since the movie is set in 1914, boxer shorts were not invented until 1925, 11 years later. Milo is the 11th king of Atlantis. Thatch is one of the surnames used by the famous historical pirate Blackbeard, and in an early draft, in fact, Milo was supposed to be a descendant of him. According to critics, Milo's characteristics were said to resemble those of Daniel Jackson, the protagonist of the 1994 film Stargate. The 2-disc special edition of the film shows that Milo is officially 32 years old, which I did not know and was very surprised to hear, because he seems to me like a young adult, and I think that's how I even put him in the save file. Like, definitely in his mid-20s and not a day older, but he must just be one of those people that kind of has that look to him. And then the last one, in a deleted scene, Milo was supposed to follow typical Disney tradition and have an animal sidekick, a rat named Plato, who lived in the museum, whom Milo treated as a pet. I thought for some reason these ones in particular were really cool, but again, if you want to see me talk about some of these in future films, if you're interested in little fun facts, let me know and I will pull some of them up, because I read them all the time and then I just never mention them. But they are also available on Disney Wiki, so you can go on any character, just type in any Disney character, Disney Wiki, and then go all the way to the bottom of their page, and there is a section called Trivia, and that is where that comes from. There were lots and lots of interesting ones for all of the different characters. I probably won't have too much time to talk about them in the Create a Sims, but for these longer builds like today, I definitely had a little bit of extra time. So there's your Atlantis random, or Milo knowledge more than anything. The Atlantis ones were not as interesting, but the Milo ones I thought were really cool. There will be a few more Atlantis videos. We have the Create a Sim coming up, and then the Townies video after, and then you can look forward to the tour video for Tartosa. I have so much to show you guys and how everything turned out. It's a really beautiful world. I'm excited to make a whole video on it and showcase it for you guys, and then we'll be moving into Oasis Springs with lots of other characters and new things to come. It is a huge world and it's going to be really exciting. Stay tuned for all of that. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.